Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located. I am Leon McClinton, and I serve as the ACUHO-I president. I want to welcome you to the 2023 ACUHO-I Annual Business Meeting. The meeting is now called to order at 3:07 p.m. Eastern Time. I have appointed Bobby Cole as a parliamentarian who serves as the Residence Education Director on the Executive Board. Now we will have Gay Perez, President-elect of the Executive Board, to present the land acknowledgement.
We would like to acknowledge the land the Association of College and University Housing Officers International occupies is the ancestral and contemporary territory of the Suwannee, the Potawatomi, Delaware, Miami, Peoria, Seneca, Wyandotte, and Ojibwe, and many other indigenous peoples. Specifically, the association resides on land ceded in the 1795 Treaty of Greenville and the forced removal of tribes through the Indian Removal Act of 1830. As an inclusive association, we want to honor the resiliency of these tribal nations and recognize the historical context that has and continues to affect the indigenous peoples of this land.
Thank you, Gay. Everyone should have received a meeting packet via email, or you can go to the ACUHO-I website and look on the annual meeting page. Also, the link to the meeting materials has been placed in the chat. We are now in the second official year of hosting the annual business meeting in the first quarter of each year. Using this format allows us to connect the meeting more closely with the end of the fiscal year and to allow all professionals to join the meeting. We look forward to hearing your thoughts about the meeting. At the end of the meeting, we will recognize those who are retired or deceased. If anyone has any additions to the list, you can submit that information using the Google Sheet that is in the chat. Joining me in this spotlight for this call is CEO Mary De Niro. I would now like to introduce the 2023 ACUHO-I Executive Board. They're the leaders who set the strategic direction for ACUHO-I. Gay Perez, Kathy Hobgood, Bobby Cole, Stephanie Lynch, Yeti Marquez Santana, Steve McKenzie, Andrew Naylor, Suzanne Price, Nairi Tryman, Lanshay Van Tonder, Steve Hernan, Susan Norton, and Olin Garrett. I would like to now introduce Olin Garrett, our Financial and Corporate Records Officer. Olin Garrett will report on registrations and current attendance at today's meeting.
Thank you, Leon, and good afternoon, everyone. We are pleased to welcome you to today's meeting. The numbers we will report on are based on the people who have registered. After the meeting, we will confirm attendance based on who has entered this webinar. The registered attendees at today's business meeting is 120. We expect some members to join us during the course of the meeting. For voting purposes, as stated in the ACUHO-I Constitution, any vote related to amending the Constitution must receive 2/3 of quorum to pass. Luckily, all other business items are approved by a simple majority, including the one item that needs to be voted on during today, the 2021 Annual Business Meeting Minutes. The 2022 Annual Business Meeting Minutes, excuse me. The minutes from the 2022 Annual Business Meeting were shared via email with the voting delegates in attendance last year, asking for corrections and feedback. The minutes were then shared with the Executive Board, who operate as the Minutes Approval Committee to complete the final review and approve the minutes before being brought forward to the full membership. At this time, I'd like to ask, are there any objections for the 2022 Annual Business Meeting Minutes as distributed? Please use the Zoom menu to raise your hand if you have an objection. Seeing no objections, I will now ask for a motion to approve the 2022 Annual Business Meeting Minutes as distributed. To offer a motion, please use the Zoom menu to raise your hand now. I recognize Michelle Stafright. Michelle, would you unmute yourself and let us know your institution, please?
Middle Tennessee State University.
Motion made by Michelle Stafright, Middle Tennessee State University. Is there a second? Nairi Tryman, University of Alabama.
Auburn University, sir.
Auburn University. You were at Alabama, my apologies. All in favor of accepting the minutes, either as presented, please use the Zoom menu to raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed, please use the Zoom menu to raise your hand. The minutes of the 2022 business meeting are approved. I yield the floor back.
Thank you, Olin. This new format allows the past president to share the good work of the year ending in December 2022. At this time, I would like to introduce you to immediate past president, Pam Schreiber.
Thank you, Leon, and hello, everyone. Greetings from the great state of Washington. So if you'd advance the slide, please. Thank you. Want to remind you of those who served on the 2022 Executive Board. It was a pleasure and an honor to work with these individuals, many of whom continue into this year's board. But I do want to give special thanks to those individuals who concluded their board term along with me, Josh Ganna, Kenny Mock, Matt Nelson, and Steve Herndon. As you heard in the introduction of the 2023 board, Steve was reappointed for another term to the board. So my gratitude to these individuals. I want to tell you a little bit about how we focused our work together last year. Hard to look back through the whole year and summarize all that happened, but I will do my best to do that for you in just a few short minutes. Because the board needs to function at a very strategic level, we continue to focus at all times on the association core pillars and the strategic emphases that were called out or are called out in our current strategic plan. The board's job is to guide the association and to stay true to these core pillars and to pursue efforts and advancements in the strategic emphases. So in regard to the strategic emphases that are called out in our current plan, we focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion and partnerships. And in regard to strategic emphases as it relates to audiences, we focused in continued work intended to support professionals working at small colleges and universities, as well as live-in staff. And I want to bring this up and share this because we really reminded ourselves as we did the work of the board, make decisions, et cetera, to stay very clearly focused on this. As I think we all experience in our own organizations, it can be easy to get distracted. There's much work to be done, and it can be difficult to identify priorities. And so this was our roadmap. Next slide. To summarize for you some of the highlights, I guess, about our work last year, I would focus on these three categories. The first is focusing on how the board created a community of leaders. It was important to me and to others that we function well as a group of leaders, and that individuals brought their experience and knowledge to bear, but once together in the boardroom, that we functioned as one. We spent time in small group conversations on various topics to discern opinions and allow folks to express their point of view. We featured different directors at each of our meetings to give reports on the work that they were doing with committees, task forces, networks, et cetera. And that way the entire board became very familiar, or at least more familiar, with what each director was working on. We obviously had the opportunity to meet twice in person, which was really instrumental. And while our technology, we're all very comfortable with this kind of a setting, it certainly helps when you can spend time in person. We prepared each month for our meetings. There was oftentimes a bit of homework, and every board member committed to coming together to be as effective as possible. And in that, we spent time with the foundation trustees in one particular session, focusing on the future of the profession. As I mentioned, we stayed focused on strategy, and specific to that, the board members together read a book called Race for Relevance. It's a publication specifically directed at association boards, and it really helped the board identify best ways to operate, but also to look into the future and to think about how we might become even more effective with the key issues that are facing associations. We stayed focused on reviewing the purpose and delivery of the various products and services to serve memberships. We approved the budget, and we spent some time considering how the association might leverage the real estate asset that we have as part of our portfolio. And then finally, I'm very proud to say we took a number of very specific actions to advance our DEI priority. We formed a work group to look at our DEI statement and to take that statement and really take it to the next level and define how do we as an association, as a board, and as volunteer leaders and as a staff, how do we live that statement in the work that we're doing? We created a nominations mid-year work group to take a look at our nominations process, quite specifically with an eye toward how do we ensure that the slate of candidates that are put in front of the membership represent the membership. We supported the Leadership Academy, and that program is of course continuing, and supported changes in a couple of our networks to better reflect the individuals that are engaged in that network and who is represented. And I think as any good leader does, as I was leaving office, I wanted to make sure that Leon had plenty to do and the new board. So we spent some time just acknowledging that the work of the 2022 board obviously continues and is being carried on by the 23 board. And so you see here some of the key activities that the current board, that the 22 board worked on and really handed forward to the 23 board. And this really is quite typical that boards operate, on projects, and they are multi-year projects and require attention through different leadership, etc. I would just end this, my statements by focusing on this last piece, engaging volunteer leaders that truly represent the membership. And as I said, we had developed a mid-year work group to look at our nominations process. That group, I chaired that group. We produced a report with some great suggestions for the nominations committee. And now I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the current nominations committee. So we are utilizing that work group's report to make sure that we are doing all we can through the nominations process to present the membership with a representative and qualified slate. So shameless plug, nominations are open. You can self-nominate, you can nominate a colleague, and I strongly encourage that you help us identify the next leaders of the association. And I believe that concludes my report. I'll now turn it over to Olin. Olin is going to do a review of the 2022 fiscal year and just demonstrate some of the key issues that the association dealt with from the financial point of view. So Olin.
Thanks, Pam. I'm pleased to share highlights of the association's financial picture for the period ending December 31st, 2022. But before I provide my report, in response to a question we received from an association member, I'd like to provide some context related to ACUHO-I's budget and staffing. The operating budget is a collaborative effort between the Finance Committee and the Executive Board, staff, and information from our business partners, technology, hotels, AV partners, etc. That information is reviewed in detail along with a variety of program information and key performance indicators by the Executive Board Finance Committee, at which time feedback is provided and changes are made. The operating budget is then presented to and ultimately approved by the ACUHO-I Executive Board during its October in-person meeting. Operational, strategic, and one-time operating expenses and revenues are reviewed and approved during this process, considering the association's many guidelines and policies, such as the reserve policy, for example. Operating statements, key performance indicators, and executive summaries are also reviewed monthly by the Executive Board's Finance Committee. The professional staff team continually strives to cut costs without impacting value to our members. Like all of our campuses, many modifications have been made in the last several years, most painful of which has been in our staffing levels at a time while we continue to take on more and adapt to the ever-changing needs of those we serve. The ACUHO-I professional permanent staff workforce remains down about 40%. That is exclusive of student workforce and translates to or accounts for the equivalent of 4 FTE positions. With that, let me share a little bit about our asset position. ACUHO-I's fiscal year follows the calendar year. As of December 31st, 2022, the association held assets totaling $5.8 million, down 10.2% from the same point in 2021. There are 4 significant factors that influenced our year-end asset position. One is an increased use of cash on hand, which we anticipated as we return to in-person events, beginning with the ACUHO-I Conference and Exposition in June. A stock market that yielded negative returns from our investments at Merrill Lynch, which I will discuss in a later slide. A significant investment in the CD market, which has produced better than expected returns. ACUHO-I made 4 investments of $200,000 each, $800,000 total, in CDs of 3, 6, 9, and 12 months respectively. It should be noted that the 3 and 6 month CDs have matured and the proceeds have been invested in new CDs as the rates of return remain high. As a result, we're temporarily sitting at an approximately 4-to-1 ratio of assets managed by Merrill Lynch as opposed to ACUHO-I, and we like to be at a 2-to-1 ratio per our investment policy. And finally, we have an increase in receivables due to the current timing of when financial support is received from the ACUHO-I Foundation, as well as an increase in priority vendor booth sales for our upcoming Campus Home Live in Portland. The following slide shares data related to the year-end financial health of the association, and by all measures, ACUHO-I is on firm financial footing. Our principal measure of financial health is our ability to fund our operations. Association policy is to have enough net liquid assets on hand to fund budgeted operations for 6 months. As you can see, we achieved the ability to support just over 9 months of expenses. Our quick incurred ratios, which refers to our ability to pay our short-term debts and have assets on hand relative to our liabilities, are favorable. About 70% of our expenses are programmatic, which is very good for an association and speaks to the value members are getting for their money. It should be noted that a significant factor in our debt to equity ratio of 0.54, which is already good, is that the association is currently carrying $1.3 million of deferred revenue, or revenue for events and services that have not yet been provided, such as annual conference registration. Under generally accepted accounting principles, ACUHO-I books revenue in the month an event or service occurs. And as our events and services happen, that debt to equity ratio will decrease. Concerning debt, repayment of the economic injury disaster loan awarded to us began in late 2022. The association continues to carry a business line of credit for emergencies, and we have yet to tap into it. I am also pleased to share that the association paid off the mortgage for the home office at 1445 Summit Street last February, and we're really excited about that. In the other key indicators section, the overall drop in membership revenue of $82,000. With respect to investments, we keep a diversified portfolio of fixed income and stock investments, and we typically follow a moderately conservative investment model that attempts to achieve moderate returns and mitigate market fluctuations. Our investments are also governed by an investment policy review annually by our investment manager, the Association Finance Committee and Executive Board, and our investment portfolio is reviewed at least quarterly. The next slide highlights our year-end asset allocations in comparison to where we were at the same point in 2021. Even for an association that invests as cautiously as we do, the market was not kind to the association. Before last year, we consistently netted moderate gains of 6 to 7%, but for year-end 2022, our investments at Merrill Lynch decreased by 13.9%, or just over $360,000. Let me share 3 critical footnotes about this loss. First, it's important to note that this is unrealized or a loss on paper only, and we are not cashing out our investments. Additionally, the association considers investment earnings non-operating, meaning proceeds are not relied upon to meet our ongoing expenses and budget obligations. And we still outperform the S&P 500, which was down 19.4% last year, and the NASDAQ, which ended 2022 down 33.4% from the year before. In slide 5, preliminary year-end figures for 2022 indicate that ACUHO-I realized a combined investment of $906,000. I've already spoken about our investments, so the most significant number to focus on here is the net operating number, which reflects an investment of $515,000. The association budgeted an anticipated investment of $456,000 in anticipation of increased revenues and expenses to support new initiatives and a return to in-person events. You can also see on this chart how we fared in 2022 compared to the 3 fiscal years prior. Please note that these numbers are preliminary and remain subject to our annual financial review process, which will occur later this year. In slide 6, several significant operational factors impacted the budget. The return of Campus Home Live and the content conferences, some of you may have known them prior as the October conference series, to in-person events resulted in increased revenues, but also increased expenses related to travel, food and beverage, which increased by 35%, and other factors. The resulting return of in-person events also corresponded with a significant decrease in event participation, particularly around virtual conferences. Participants have indicated a clear preference for being in community and have been significantly impacted by Zoom fatigue. For some events, ACUHO-I continued to offer virtual team access passes, allowing multiple individuals from the same institution to attend ACUHO-I events at deeply discounted rates. Scholarship possibilities continue to be reimagined, and the placement exchange ended 15% stronger financially than in 2021. Memberships continue to return slowly also as they did in 2021, and members are taking advantage of institutional multi-year memberships. Still, we continue to be concerned about recapturing lapsed memberships and continue to see lower enrollments in online courses as we did in 2021. We also continue making difficult but necessary decisions about controlling expenses. Travel and professional development remain suspended for the first 5 months of the year, and the Journal and the Talking Stick continued digital-only delivery. We also made a strategic financial commitment to start the Future of the Profession initiative and devoted funds to launching Rhythm, our new association management system software. It should be mentioned that the association continued to experience significant staffing changes in the Columbus office in 2022. 6 full-time staff members left the office, resulting in increased expenses due to the payout of vacation time and other terminating benefits and cost savings from positions being unfilled for a period. Open positions are being reimagined and refilled strategically by Mary and the ACUHO-I staff. Finally, let me share 2 slides that provide some trend data. Over the last 10 years, the association's assets have grown from $5.24 million in 2013 to $5.76 million at 2022 year end. Revenue did increase relative to where they were in 2021. I know the graph says a little bit differently, but they did increase. And we have discussed the increase in expenses. In slide 8, you can see how our core revenues have shifted over time. The blue circle line shows revenue from Campus Home Live. The purple square line shows revenue from other educational programs and services. And the green triangle line shows membership revenue. Before the pandemic, over half of our revenue was based on in-person events. COVID shifted our reliance heavily on membership revenue. For year-end 2022, the ratio of in-person events to membership revenue is moving back toward pre-COVID levels. There is also a slight uptick in support from the foundation, which supports some non-strategic operations and staff support for the association. As always, ACUHO-I would not be in the financial position it's in without the sustained leadership and effort of many parties, including the Executive Board and Finance Committee, Foundation trustees, Mary's leadership as CEO, and the work of Senior Director for Finance and Administration, Sheila Meyer, and the ACUHO-I finance team. Please join me in thanking them for their work. This concludes my report, and I yield the floor back to Leon. Or I will turn it over straight to Mary.
Thank you, Owen. Now we'll hear from Mary De Niro. She will share her CEO report. You're muted, Mary. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. It's so nice to see so many people here at the annual business meeting. This is the time of the year when we get to sometimes brag a little bit about what's gone on. You just heard about our financial position. Pam shared with you the good work of the executive board. Today, what I would like to do is to share a couple of big projects that we're working on. But before I do that, I just want to address a question that came to me directly from Craig Allen, and that was around what is the real estate asset? And so the real estate asset is the ACUHO-I home office. Our staff continues to remote, basically virtually or in a hybrid situation. We have gotten approval from the ACUHO-I executive board to work with our management company to see if we can lease some or all parts of the space. As many of you know, we have a client, a renter on the 3rd floor, Neighborhood Design Group, that pays rent. And we think that there's some other parts of the building that also can be leased out and provide some passive income for us. But with that, I would like to talk a little bit about the future of the profession task force, and I hope all of you know about it. It is a project that involves engagement from many, many, many volunteers across 6 phases. We just concluded phase 2 in January, and we kicked off phase 3 several weeks ago at a retreat in Washington, D.C., hosted by executive board member Stephanie Lynch from Georgetown. You're going to be able to experience some of what phase 3 is when you come to the annual conference in June. Those are the deliverables. These design deliverables are being created, not just to give you answers, but rather to provide information that allows each college and university to identify their best path forward. As we mentioned, we will have the first group of those deliverables available at the conference. Another set of deliverables will happen in the fall, and then the final set will happen probably at the end of 23, early 24. But it's important to note that this process isn't a one and done. We don't see this as, okay, we did this, now let's move on to something else. Rather, we believe that this is an evolution that will continue to release practical tools to our members, and regardless of the number of beds. We are really looking at this design phase to think about what does it mean if you are a small university, a mid-university, or a university with a larger number of beds? How does that juxtapose against things like if you're a private institution or a public institution? So while it won't tailor to every single situation that's out there, we believe that it is going to be a great tool for you to use with your colleagues across campus to really help you reimagine what the future of campus housing looks like on your campus. Pam shared the strategic plan, and I'm bringing this slide back up because she said that it guides the executive board. It's something that also guides the staff. Our current plan is focused on the 4 pillars of education, knowledge, resources, community, and influential leadership and advocacy. And she mentioned the areas of emphases. As we think about everything that we're doing, every program that we're doing, every time we have a volunteer that we're putting on a task force or that raises their hand, we're putting it through the lens of this strategic plan. I bring this up today because, again, it's hard to believe, but this plan concludes at the end of 2023. Many of you, and I'd like to thank you, have completed the all-member survey. That information is going to be one key leg of the 2024 strategic plan. Another leg, of course, will be the future of the profession. In April, we will be meeting as a strategic planning group to think about what are those things that ACUHO-I needs to be looking for in the future. I would also share with you the areas of emphases around our live-in staff, small college, and multicultural groups. We have 3 symposia that are being offered in April. They are low cost. We encourage you to make sure that your team could go. There are team passes. And this is an example of how we live the strategic plan. Another example of this kind of programming is things that we're doing at the annual conference. So, we have our strategic plan, we have the future of the profession. As many of you know, the annual conference call for programs were built around the 8 imperatives of the future of the profession. So you can see how one layer builds on the next layer builds on the next layer. And we hope that you can see that it's all tied together. Now I'd like to talk about Campus Home Live. For many years, we were the annual conference and exhibit hall or exhibits. As ACUHO-I emerged from the pandemic, we emerged as a different organization, and our annual conference is different. So we pursued this rebrand to better ground what is clearly one of our most important annual events and the essence of our work, which is making campus home. It's a place where students find community. It's a sense of belonging and success. This concept was tested with audiences who really loved how we're continuing to use the Making Campus Home tagline. We expect that this new concept is going to help us breathe some different life into our conference experience, and hopefully will inspire you and other delegates to find greater meaning in this point of connection for the field. There's 2 other topics that I would like to address. One is a question that came through the registration process, and that's about, excuse me, the housing internship program and what we're doing to make sure our members know about this program. There's good news. The number of candidates from last year is up. Last year we had about 327. This year we have about, or excuse me, it was flat. Last year we had 327. This year we have 300. We continue to find and utilize new roads to communicate information about the campus or the internship program. We certainly put it in connection. We make sure past host sites know about it. We talk to past interns. We put it on CSP Talk. The host sites do webinars, and we do webinars for our internship candidates. But I don't think it's any surprise that the number of people who are going into higher ed programs has declined. And that certainly reflects on the housing internship program. The last topic that I'd like to talk about that I was asked about is around global. And I am pleased to share that we have renewed our global partnerships. In 2023, we will be hosting 3 NHTI-like programs across the globe. This month, we have the South African Housing Training Institute that will be hosted in Pretoria, South Africa. In the same month, we will host GHTI Institute in Melbourne, Australia. And then later this year in November, we will host a second GHTI in Europe, and that will be held in the UK. I'm also thrilled to report that we have a representative from Malaysia who is attending the conference in South Africa with the goal of bringing that program to her home country in the next few years. So with that, I again thank you for your support of ACUHO-I. I thank you so much for those of you who volunteer on a regular basis with us. We couldn't do it without you. And finally, I would like to thank the staff at 1445. Excuse me, the home office. They have done incredible work as we move out of the pandemic and into the new ACUHO-I. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Mary, for that very thorough CEO report. Now we're going to hear from Shana Alston, who will provide a foundation report.
Hello, all. I would like to thank you all for your continued support of the foundation. Without fail, our membership showed up for our profession and our colleagues by giving your time, talent, and treasure, and we are grateful. I would like to take this opportunity to share our 2022 foundation highlights. So we had 1,372 unique individual donors and 19 unique industry partner donors. We were fortunate to raise $375,000 because of your extreme generosity in 2022. The way we were able to do that is by having 2 pledges for our corporate major donors, which raised $100,000. We had 23 new pledges for our individual major donors, and that resulted in $117,000. We had our industry partners also support us with an additional $48,000. And through our Parthenon fundraising, which I was very proud of, the highest that we have raised thus far was $36,000. We had our conference raffle and silent auction that raised $12,000. And lastly, we have other individual pledges that raised $10,000. And the exceptional work, I want to recognize all of our regions. They were able to raise $50,000 as well. Throughout last year, we focused on some foundation policies and operations, and we were able to update our endowment management policy as well as our operational standards. So I want to support that we as the foundation trustees also aim to support our strategic initiatives, and we do this by pillars. And so as you can see in 2022, our strategic initiative funding was $176,000. Much of that, 67% of that came from the association, with 32% of it being supported by the foundation. I'm excited to say that much of our work in our knowledge resources has been operationalized by the foundation, and that's all the work that you see that we support with research grants and our research manager, as well as our searchable research index and database. And then we were able to support in influential leadership as the foundation, supporting the future of the profession that you heard Mary speak about. Much of the other work in diversity, equity, and inclusion was supported by the association, as well as our work in education. So we had an amazing year, and I want to thank you all. It's because of your amazing generosity, and I want to express gratitude on behalf of the foundation leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana, for that report. If you have any new business to report, please use the Zoom panel to raise your hand, and we will unmute you. Okay, if we do not have any new business to report, this concludes the formal part of our meeting. Now we want to recognize our retired professionals: Rick Bradley at UNC Chapel Hill, Debbie Johnson Bisquet, UNC Chapel Hill, Abed Jaradat, University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and Patricia Nolan, Texas Women's University. Is there anyone who should be added to the list? Please enter those names into the Google Sheet provided in the chat. Now we want to recognize the deceased: Vera Jackson, Jackson State University; John Pence, Kansas State University; Dr. Teresa Powell, Temple University. Please provide names of those professionals who have passed away in the last 12 months by submitting using the Google Sheet provided in the chat. Let's please take a moment of silence. Thank you. On behalf of our association, I want to thank you for your continued participation and support. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in Portland this summer, June 26th through the 29th. At 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time, this concludes the 2023 annual business meeting. Thank you and take care.